With this is Don Campbell here in Glastonbury at the Chocolate Love Temple, and today we're super lucky to have with us our friend David Avocado Wolfe.
Thanks,
David, for coming in.
Thank you. Of course. I would have come in anyway.
Awesome. So, David, you've been traveling around the world and spreading all your information, and I know that you've been doing a lot of research into raw food and nutrition, and especially into longevity. So I wanted to kind of open up our conversation just by broadly discussing some of your research in what you feel are the primary benefits of adopting a raw food longevity lifestyle. Why would somebody go this direction?
The number one reason is to learn about your body. That's the most important thing about raw foods, is it teaches you what your body needs, what it doesn't need. It teaches you how to distinguish between different types of food: protein, carbohydrates, fats, and oils. It teaches you about your dominant metabolism. For example, some people, they need more protein, some people need more fat, some people need more carbohydrates to function and maintain a level blood sugar. And that feels good to them. So it creates a little bit of organization out of chaos, because we don't know anything about metabolism. We're coming off of eating chemicals, junk food, packaged food, food that was dead years before.
Yeah.
You know, that's what we're coming off of. So the living food is a very important tool in self-discovery and also in getting really embodied into your body, because you start going out of pain. A lot of people are in pain all the time, and living foods get you out of pain so that you start feeling good all the time.
True. Pain in the way that so many people are just walking around so dense, they don't even realise they're so dense until they start discovering these vital foods and these superfoods.
Yeah, like the density of the tissue.
Yeah.
You know, like you can grab any of my tissue and just grab it like the nape of a cat. You know, it's elastic, right?
Okay.
Whereas, you know, I get into people, I start working on them, and there's density, hardness, compaction of, you know, who knows what kind of nutrients are in there or lack thereof. But the tissue is hard, and raw food softens you up so that you get actually a flow of nutrition, you get a flow of blood, and you get oxygen to your tissues. You actually feel like you can move around, you regain lost flexibility. Okay. And to some degree, you also eventually develop a real primal core strength.
Okay. And would you say an element of the nutrition combined with a lot of body movement, say cycling or rebounding or swimming, is important? Would you advise people to take up something that a sport or something they enjoy doing as well?
Yeah, definitely. Even 15-20 minutes a day of some kind of a sport that people like is very good exercise.
Okay.
Quit fast walking. I think walking is actually #1 longevity exercise. If you study the people who live the longest, really? They're walkers.
They're walkers.
They're walkers, and that's our most natural exercise. So that's a really good idea. Get out and speed walk. Some people are into rebounding. Some people are into different sports. Whatever it is that you like, jump into it. But with a live food, it really is a nice matchup. So if you like that combination of exercise and nutrition, this is an incredible area of exploration.
Yeah, brilliant. How about with some of the things like these yoga swings and things like this? Have you had a go on those?
Absolutely, I have 2 of them myself. Okay. I actually have them on springs, so they're
swings on springs.
They're swings on springs. So it's a reverse rebounder, so it's hanging off the roof with springs, and that's really incredible. That's really good. Yeah. Wow. It's essential. A yoga swing can be used to heal yourself. Yeah. Because you can get the elongation and traction across your spine in the way that you need it. And that heals you.
Oh wow, that's super sweet. Cool. Thanks, David. So I started out finding out about your information through I've got a copy of it here.
The Sunfood diet. Yeah, it's precariously balanced back there. I can get it. Yeah. Whoa. There we go.
Okay, we got one.
I can just send it back. Yeah. Okay, so we've got. Let's see. There we go. Well, there we go. Right.
Just going to double check. Everything's good. Yeah, sweet man. Yeah, so I wanted to ask you, this is if you haven't checked this book out, this was the book that for me totally dialed dialed me into raw food and going raw food about 14 years ago or something, when I first was given this book by my good friend Sky. And what I loved about this book was the Sunfood triangle, because I love things in kind of symbolic form and everything.
Yeah.
And when I was looking at the Sunfood triangle and the way that you kind of formulated the triangle in there, yeah, you got it in there.
Yeah, where was it? I just saw it.
You just flick past it. So I was wanting to know that if you could discuss a little bit for people the Sunfood. Yeah, there it is. The Sunfood triangle, how it works, and how the individual can adapt the balance of the food groups to suit their needs. I think you covered it a little bit.
Yeah, it's a basic tool of understanding how your body really wants to be delivered nutrients.
Okay.
So, for example, if you eat only green leafy vegetables, eventually you start craving like something sweet and something fatty. That's kind of just how it is. If you eat only sweet foods, like sweet raw foods, like just fruit, you start craving something. You start craving green vegetables, and you start craving fatty foods.
Yeah.
And to just balance your blood sugar out. So the main teaching of all of live food is adopting over to a live food diet and maintaining a balanced blood sugar. That's really the key idea.
Blood sugar.
Yeah, that's super key, because the ups and the downs is associated with moodiness, anger, extreme behavior.
Okay.
There's a very strong correlation actually between ups and downs with blood sugar and depression and moodiness and even bipolar or schizophrenia.
Really?
Yeah, so they're triggers actually. The blood sugar roller coaster is a trigger. So the key thing about live food is, and it's the first instinct, is like, wait a second, what am I going to eat? Because you're looking to keep your blood sugar stable, and most people are using meat to do that. And if you're a vegetarian, you're probably using dairy to do that. To just eat something real fatty, real heavy, to kind of just balance that blood sugar over hours and hours and hours.
Right.
And what we're doing here is we're teaching you through the Sunfood diet how to do that with plants.
Okay.
Right. So that shift over, that bridge, is sometimes takes weeks, years, months. Different people, it's a different amount of time, depending on their ability to understand and work with their blood sugar primarily.
Brilliant. Well, that was one thing that I wanted to discuss actually later on, but I would like to bring up now, because you're talking about blood sugar. Often here in the Chocolate Love Temple, we get people coming in almost on a daily basis saying, I have diabetes, and different levels of diabetes. And so, I saw some of your talk the other day in London, and I remember you gleaned over about how somebody can heal themselves, or, as we're discussing now, balance out their blood sugars and get away from this, label on themselves on being diabetic. So how through live foods can we heal ourselves if we have some situation with diabetes? Okay, well, first of all, I've been working with Dr. Gabriel Cousins in Arizona for 13 years, and he's probably the leading doctor in the world on healing diabetes, which is really not a disease, especially diabetes type 2. Okay. It's really just a syndrome. It's a syndrome. Okay. It's a mineral deficiency syndrome. It is a rancid omega-6 fatty acid overdose syndrome. Oh, really? It's a toxicosis syndrome. So it's really a syndrome. Okay. So when you remove the sources of the syndrome, namely the food, and you replace it with food that actually gives you what you want, gives you the minerals, gives you the omega-3, gives you the enzymes, and gives you actually some ability to detoxify yourself, then the symptoms go away. You go away from the diabetes. And we've had so many people within 5 days of being at the Tree of Life in Arizona get off insulin completely, injecting 20 years, get off insulin, drop their insulin. Really? And Gabriel wrote a book called There Is a Cure for Diabetes, which you should read if you're a diabetic. You should definitely read that. Essentially, hypoglycemia, and then the next stage of it, which is diabetes, are mineral deficiency toxicosis syndromes, as I described, which you can completely reverse and should start reversing early. Now, when I say hypoglycemia, I'm talking about that beginning of that blood sugar roller coaster,
which a lot of people are experiencing more and more at an earlier and earlier age now.
Yeah, well, this is exactly the question came from a young boy. He was like 8 or 9 years old, and so I was asking his mum, you know, like what was his symptoms and things, and so it's great that I got, because I said specifically, well, I'll ask David and see you know what light he can shed on the diabetes.
It's so important to have seaweed. It's so important to have vegetables.
Seaweeds. So that leads totally into a subject that fascinates myself and Skydancer as well. We're both really on this one. We've been wild looking for seaweeds and stuff up in Scotland. I wanted to ask you about, have you done much research into seaweed, and which seaweeds are the best to eat, and how much seaweed does one require in their daily diet? So,
great.
So seaweeds.
It seems like seaweed's one of those classes of foods like medicinal mushrooms that the more you have, the better you feel.
Right.
I'm sure there's a toxic limit, you know, because of the iodine. I've seen people hit the toxic limit of
Okay.
iodine. So different people have different ability to absorb iodine.
Okay.
And some people that threshold is low.
Right.
So they can't really eat the amount of seaweeds that, for example, I can eat.
Right.
But I like dulse, nori, hijiki, wakame, arame. I love sea lettuce, sea palm, all different kinds of seaweeds. I mean, some of the fresh seaweeds I've had, like bladderwrack, off the west coast of British Columbia. Some of the most incredible experiences I've had eating, like foraging wild food.
Really?
Yeah. So I recommend them all. They're all wild foods. That's a very rare thing in our food diet, food chain today. Is like, we don't have wild food, and we never heard of it.
Wild
you know what I mean? Yeah, people are like on 100% domesticated food their whole life, and have no alkaloids with which to protect themselves immunologically, and so they become susceptible. Now, this can happen from just an unconscious level, you know, where we don't even know, never heard that before, or people can get into raw foods and eat totally domesticated foods, like seedless fruits, things like that, and not have a real strong immunological response, and people can go down on both sides of that equation. So whether you're a raw foodist or not, or whether you're thinking about changing your diet or not, I'd recommend seaweed as an addition, because it's wild food and you need that. It's like one of those things that gets in your connective tissue. It's neurological.
Elasticity.
Elasticity of your tissues. Vitamin B9. So if you're thinking about getting pregnant, you need folate. Vitamin B9. It's in seaweed. And it also is a tremendous source of a broad spectrum of minerals, again, which we're deficient of. We are really deficient in that. The hypoglycemia syndrome, the ups and downs, the extremes anger that we see, diabetes, are all mineral deficiency syndromes.
Right. Okay. And so the alkaloids are the alkaloids are contained within the seaweed as well?
Well, in seaweed, the alkaloids are a little bit different. They're actually polysaccharides. So they're gummy types of substances, or what we call demulcents, which is very healing digestive tract. You know, if you've ever heard of like guar gum or xanthan gum, these can be made out of seaweeds. It's a gum. It's a gum. It's a jello type of substance, or a gelatin type of substance.
Okay.
And that kind of nutrient is very healing to our digestive tract. It's very good for all the things we just named, like connective tissue, neurological health, and immunological health. So seaweed comes in a lot. It's important.
Oh, great. That's an exciting topic for people to discover, and especially going and looking for it for yourself as well.
Yes, and wild foraging seaweed.
An adventure with you and your friends, and you get out there and go looking for seaweeds and stuff. So it's kind of like a seaweed adventure, I think. Cool. So seaweeds, and then it's still staying in the in like the realm of the greens and the dark green leafy vegetables and everything. Something with the Sunfood triangle that really dialed me in, that really helped me personally like transition into a predominant living foods, raw foods lifestyle, was definitely the dark green leafy vegetables. So there's kale and
parsley,
spinach. And what other lovely things?
Nettles.
Stinging nettles, like taking the little tops of the stinging nettles and eating those, really important.
That's a very important part of the Sunfood diet, is that whole idea of eating vegetables, eating green vegetables, how important that actually is.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with live food, you're dealing with real live food, so the energies are much greater and much more powerful So the sugars in fruit are usually much more powerful than the carbohydrates in rice, for example.
Okay.
They're stimulating. The green leafy vegetables and the power of green vegetables really cannot be underestimated, because they're very strongly alkalizing. You hear all this acid alkaline business.
Yeah.
Green vegetables are the most alkalizing food there is.
Alkalizing, yeah. And that's also what I got from reading your text and your information, is that one of the primary reasons why you want to adopt and adapt a living foods lifestyle is to help alkalize our bodies. Yeah. So because the Western diet's very acidic, right? It's like
it's basically all dead food. It's all cooked food. It's all processed food. There isn't really any semblance of anything real in most people's diets. Meaning that even if they have vegetables, it's all domesticated.
Yeah.
So we're trying to just get back to what's real and what's here already, and reassemble out of the wreckage of all nutrition systems something that's sensible. Because we can really make the future any way we want it, and we can also make our future a whole lot more plant-based than it's ever been before, so we get a lot more sustainable. It's way easier to maintain a garden than it is a cow. And so the cow takes you can't have a cow in your backyard very easily. Your back garden's going to be filled up with that whole cow. There's not much left to and it's going to be stomping, and you need a lot of room for that cow. But you don't need much room to grow vegetables.
That's right.
So that's kind of the idea. Is like, hey, we could go to actually a simpler solution, lower on the food chain, that's less toxic. Because another thing about that cow is, we don't know what the heck that cow's eating. We don't know what it's been injected with. We don't know what it's been exposed to. We don't know what kind of water it's been drinking. And that becomes it, right? You are what you eat.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of variables with animal food that we may not want to take on anymore, especially with like hoof and mouth disease and like unbelievable stuff like mad cow and all this weird stuff that's happening now. The risks are very high. We know also with the nuclear fallout that it shows up in milk first, and it shows up in animal tissue. Yeah,
in animal tissue first. Huh?
Yeah,
right.
And it's detectable in milk of an animal first before any other is detectable.
Yeah.
That's really important to know, because the animal's kind of concentrating things out of its environment.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's a good thing that obviously that we're looking at as well, with the seriousness of what happened over in Japan with the fallout and everything. What would you recommend people in that? I know iodine, for example, is a primary mineral to be taking on board after this this event. Are there any other things that you would advise people to be taking up?
I did actually a whole podcast on this. If you're interested in checking out, it's thebestdayever.com.
Great.
/news, and it's podcast number 64. Thebestdayever.com. All four of those words together. /news, and then podcast 64. That's my free audio blog, by the way. And in there I get into things like the importance of seaweeds, salty foods, iodine supplements, chaga mushroom, ginseng, asparagus root, reishi mushroom, ashwagandha, and other items that have been known to help protect the body from radiation, that have been studied, pretty well studied actually.
Right. Wow, that's awesome. So 64, podcast 64.
That's right.
That's where it's at, podcast 64. Check it out. Brilliant. So oh yeah, so we've talked about that. Kind of leads a little bit onto, because I mean that kind of thing potentially we'd seen with, say, like for Hiroshima, for example, the fallout of Hiroshima, there were a lot of people like seeing cancers and stuff showing up. So another of the probably the most rife diseases in Western society is cancers, and I was wondering if you could give us a brief synopsis of how of what living foods, raw foods we can be taking to combat any kind of cancer forms, in cancer cells forming in the body.
Okay, well, I can't give medical advice about cancer, so I apologize for that.
Okay.
So I will say this: there's a big elephant in the living room here. In the chocolate shop. In the chocolate cup was a big elephant. And the elephant is, for some reason, all this cancer research has not looked into the 77,000 different chemicals we've dumped into the environment since 1940. That is so preposterous that we could have this epidemic of cancer, and the obvious cause of it, the 77,000 different artificial chemicals we've dumped in since 1940 into our environment, is not even addressed or looked at.
Whoa.
So with live food, we address and look at the chemicals that are carcinogenic, that cause cancer.
Right.
And we make sure we don't expose our body to them, or where most of us are, we already have exposed our body to them, so we stop the toxification, and then we get into a mode of detoxification, of removing the different types of radioactive isotopes, which can be removed from your body through certain strategies, detox strategies. We get into removing the furans, benzene, hexane, and all the solvents that are carcinogenic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it goes on with the heavy metals and all the different petroleum byproducts, which are also carcinogenic, because many of those petroleum pesticides are actually triggers. They're xenoestrogens, so they're estrogen triggers in our body that can stimulate the production of prostate cancer or breast cancer.
Wow, thank you. What would you, let me just see where we're at. So that kind of covers, oh yeah, well that's right, what I wanted to remember was, would you recommend, in terms of like some regular cleansing, where would something like regular colonics rate on your, on your list of cleansing techniques?
Oh, I'd say that colonics and enemas,
recommend?
yes, I think colonics and enemas are essential. No matter how dirty that bathtub is, unless you pull the plug, you're not going to be able to clean the water in there.
Yeah.
You have to pull the plug. You have to let everything drain out and allow everything out. Very important. And colonics and enemas are just key part of cleansing.
Brilliant.
And you find out pretty quickly when you're doing colonics, especially every day, that stuff keeps coming out. And of course, the next question is, where's it all coming from? How backed up are we really? In a lot of cases, very backed up. If anybody's been chronically ill for months, weeks, or years, they're backed up. They're constipated. They're sitting in a soup of infection.
Ooh.
Got to get that. Got to get things moving.
Yeah, we don't like the sound of that. Cool. So I know that you're like globally traveling and moving around a lot, but yet you're here and you look like vital and super healthy and everything. And like when I saw you in London, like totally like glowing. So how are you able, when you're on the road, like a lot of our friends and stuff and people will be watching this, often thinking, how do we stay vibrant when we're like traveling, and like often people on the planes and international travel and stuff like that. How are you able to, what would be your strategies for that kind of traveling?
Well, one thing I try to do is connect with nature as much as possible. When I'm traveling around Europe, I like to do hot saunas, jumping into the sea or into a lake, doing the hot-cold story, which is really powerful, right, for cleansing. Also, I'm, of course, hunting on wild spring water and bathing in wild springs.
We're going to do wild springs.
I mean, since I've been here in this town, I've only been bathing in wild, ice-cold spring water. That's all you get. There's no hot water, there's no hot shower. So, we're doing that, which is nice, and it's a nice wake-up call. And that's where the energy is in nature. And of course, I eat sparsely when I'm on the road usually. So if you eat less, you're just healthier in general. That's just the way it is.
And is it? What about? So have you jumped in the springs up in Glastonbury?
Yeah, and the springs all around here. Yeah, of course. Every morning,
sweet.
5:30 in the morning, you'll probably find me there. Just crack it on. Just as soon as there's enough light out there for me to see what I'm doing, I'm in the spring washing up in the street. Yeah,
love it. Brilliant. I'll be there tomorrow. Spring water washing. Cool. So it's funny. Every question I'm asking you, you're like superseding what I'm about, because then my next question was around water and the importance of water in our diet. It's funny. Even though I sort of like, especially with my family and stuff, I tell them, stop drinking tap water. It isn't difficult. You just need to stop drinking the tap water.
Stop drinking tap water and stop drinking plastic. Also,
in the plastic,
even the most hardcore fortified wines that I know in America, like Mad Dog 2020 and Night Train, are in glass. They don't bottle that stuff even in plastic.
Okay.
So that just tells you about how low quality even is plastic water. So we don't even touch the plastic water. Totally off that. Totally off tap water in any form. That's spun through 50 million filters and ionized and all that stuff. It's like, just drink spring water and get out of that whole municipal tap water nightmare, which it is actually a nightmare.
Right. Yeah.
People try to enroll me all the time, like, which filter should I get for my drinking water? And it's like, you're trying to enroll the wrong person in your deal. I can't in any way go along with your idea of trying to drink tap water in any form, no matter how filtered it is. So I'm the wrong person to ask about that. I'm the person, you want to come ask me about spring water, I'd be happy to tell you. I only drink spring water from the source, fresh, and that's the deal.
So spring water, I know that you've traveled a few times recently to Iceland as well, and and in your talk you mentioned a few of the elements and the makeup of the water over there. I was wondering if you could just let people know a little bit about like the Icelandic spring water, because we've heard that's the bomb.
It is. It's the blossom.
It's the blossom.
Icelandic spring water is it, because it's volcanic, it's zeolite rich, and it's highly detoxifying. So you drink it and you get your zeolites naturally. It's in the water. Reykjavik tap water, I'm sure, is the best tap water in the world. I'm sure.
Right. Okay. So that is the only tap water you might advise over in Iceland.
Yeah. If you're in Reykjavik,
In Reykjavik,
it's pristine. It's actually the whole water in that whole. I'm not really into pipes that have right angle turns. So
they don't
even when we're there, we go for the spring water in the mountains. But there is a lot to be said about Iceland and its pure water. There's a lot to be said. Some of the springs I've been to in Iceland, some of the best in the world, without question.
So I've heard a lot about zeolites recently. What are zeolites, man?
Zeolites are when volcanic lava hits the ocean, and if you've ever seen that phenomenon, the volcanic water, obviously being volcanic lava being very hot, hits the water and it just rapidly cools off and expands, and in that process creates like miniature sponge-like molecular structures that are going to have a very strong negative charge, apparently. That's kind of the deal. And when they go into your body, when you find those deposits in the earth where that has happened, there's a zeolite deposit, you're going to actually find an area where you can get a high amount of negative charge in the clay. Basically, that's what zeolites are. It's like a clay. And it draws off of you the most toxic types of debris, which is apparently all positively charged, like heavy metals, like radioactive debris, like plastics and pesticides, which are all positively charged, and they're attracted to the negatively charged zeolite.
So it helps pull that out of your body.
To detoxification.
Detoxification.
Super clay.
Super clay.
Super clay. Do
you have any of that? You have super clay on bestdayever.com? Is that something that you have zeolites?
Yes, we have been into zeolites on longevitywarehouse.com, actually. That's where I make my products available, through longevitywarehouse.com. But the bestdayever.com is actually it's like a magazine, an online magazine with 100 gigabytes minimum, hundreds of gigabytes of material, of audio, video, text information, interactive chat area where you can really get your questions answered. And then I go through the whole site and answer every question every month.
Really?
Yes.
Whoa.
And I've been doing that for almost 10 years.
That's dedication right
almost
there.
Almost 10 years of doing that. I've
dedicated.
Found out a lot over the years. It's great. It's kept me on my toes.
Brilliant. So just for somebody, if they're watching and they're like, oh, what are raw foods? Where do I start? Somebody that's like pretty fresh and that's been eating, say, like your average cooked vegetarian diet or something. What kind of advice would you give to someone first starting out on their raw food longevity adventure?
A salad a day keeps acidosis away is an old phrase. A salad a day is really nice. And a vegetable juice every day is really nice, preferably a green juice.
Yeah.
And then a nice blended superfood smoothie, so you get the components that you need, the protein that you need for your brain. There is a big myth, and it's being overturned right now, it's really coming undone actually, about this whole thing that vegetarians are weak or wimps or any of that kind of stuff. That's kind of been figured out. It's not true. You can be very strong and be a vegetarian. However, you can also be very strong and be deficient in protein. Now that's important, because the main thing that protein does is neurologically helps you stay in balance. So when somebody actually has a protein deficiency, it doesn't show up as flabby muscles or anything like that. It actually shows up as neurological problems.
Oh.
And so that is the biggest issue with vegetarianism and veganism, is neurological problems. Like, are people getting enough protein? Are they getting enough B12? Are they getting enough omega-3 fatty acids, especially the long-chain omega-3 fatty acids like DHA and EPA, to maintain neurological health? It's not about, like, do you have endurance or muscles or anything like that. Vegetarians are superior in that area, actually. but may still be deficient in protein.
Okay, and where can we find these proteins in a living food diet? Where are we going to find this?
The best,
the quantity.
Yeah, and the quality that you want really comes down to superfoods.
Superfoods.
And those are things like bee pollen, royal jelly, maca.
Maca is
all the algae, the microalgae from marine phytoplankton to chlorella to blue-green algae to spirulina. You're going to find those things in medicinal mushrooms, which are actually very good protein sources.
Oh, really?
And neurologically active and helpful neurologically. Hemp seed protein, excellent, and we could just go on. You know, that's why I've written that book, Superfoods, because it just covers all of that kind of stuff, which is very important because the thing about neurological health is it's very insidious because people don't realize when they're neurologically in trouble. There we go.
Superfoods.
Yeah. And this is, I think, a really good primer to the top 20 superfoods that we have available to us in the Western world now.
Yeah.
And pretty soon the Eastern world.
Yeah, I was just looking at that earlier, and camu is one of my favourite ones. You've got camu listed there, and then maca is one of my super favourite ones. So you've done it again. It's just happened again. Like we've got onto the mushrooms, and something that I've been dialing in with yourself and Sky also. Like he's been making your longevity drinks, and we've been trying your longevity drinks here in the UK. We've been checking these out, and so I've said, with medicinal mushrooms are high up on your longevity strategy. Could you share some of your knowledge around medicinal mushrooms and their benefits?
Well, I got into medicinal mushrooms basically because that's what's available in the ecosystem where I live, in the temperate regions of Canada.
Oh, really?
Yeah, okay. And that's what's there. And it's and of course I have
forest.
It's in the forest.
In the forest.
And I was cornered 9-10 years ago by Truth Calkins, who's one of my favorite herbalists from Los Angeles, and he really turned me on to reishi mushroom. I eventually became a wild mushroom hunter, and hunt down wild reishi and maitake and shiitake and foliota and trimides and chaga. And I actually pretty much reintroduced chaga into the whole Western litany of health foods. Chaga is the king of the medicinal mushrooms, and I just recently wrote a book on it called Chaga, King of the Medicinal Mushrooms.
Oh, really?
Not out yet. Will be out September 2012. Very excited about that particular book because there has never been a book on chaga in the West, ever. There's never been anything.
Chaga, medicinal mushrooms?
And these medicinal mushrooms are immunological. They're food for your immune system, and which is about 50% of your detoxification mechanism. So if we don't have medicinal mushrooms, we may not notice a difference until we have an immunological problem, which usually happens either later in life or if we get hit by something really heavy like a flu or pneumonia or something like that.
Yeah.
The medicinal mushrooms probably, the whole class of mushrooms in general, probably overall add about 10 years to your life. Just like the bee products, like honey, bee pollen, and royal jelly, those products add about 10 years to your life. If you have them. If you don't have them, then you miss that. But
so if you're doing both, it's 20 years.
Right, exactly. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And this is something that's like old folk wisdom.
Okay.
Yeah, people in Europe especially, people in Russia, people in China, they know it's all about the medicinal mushrooms for immune system and helping your immune system become more intelligent. It changes your immune system, so you actually are more capable of dealing with immunological attack. Because we're always under bombardment of what's foreign, what's domestic. Our body's trying to always figure this out, and we're always looking at more novel ways of being prophylactic, which is a fancy way of saying being preventative. About all the conditions of arthritis and all these diseases. And the medicinal mushrooms are top on that list.
So we strengthen our immune system, and through strengthening our immune system, we're just not going to be susceptible to all this other, all these other diseases kicking around, really.
That's right, yeah. And see, I've also, over the years, because the old, kind of raw food story that came out of natural hygiene was that, if you are completely clean of toxins, then you can't actually get sick. That's not true.
Okay.
It's mostly true.
Yeah.
But it's not completely true. One of my best friends was a natural hygienist, and he died of staph infection. He was the most cleaned out, pure guy you could possibly imagine, pure in heart and soul and spirit and body.
Oh, wow.
And he died of a staph infection. Now, if he had medicinal mushrooms, probably wouldn't have died of staph infection. If he had any medicinal herbs, he probably wouldn't have died of a staph infection. But he was against everything. He was against garlic. He was against every kind of thing that could have actually helped him. And I've noticed that people sometimes polarize against the very thing that would help them. So we have to be very careful of that you don't polarize against the very thing that would help you based on some kind of a dogma, which it happens a lot.
Yeah. So would you encourage people to get out of their I'm sure you would actually, get out of their dogma and really be more using one's own intuition to, what is resonating for you as an individual? Because earlier I was saying, asking other people about questions they'd like to ask, and you have the Indian Ayurvedic system, where you got the doshas.
Yeah.
You know about
sure,
that,
absolutely.
Kapha, Vata, Pitta or something. So the question kind of came down to, so if you've got the doshas, is a living foods diet, appropriate for the doshas across the board, or perhaps do some people need to ratio it so that maybe they're still, say, perhaps eating a little quinoa or something like that in their diet,
If somebody is very vata, they're very they have a lot of air in their system. Yeah. They're very neurologically out of balance, very skinny. Then that kind of a person probably is not best for them to be doing live food diet 100%. They probably need some cooked food in their diet, and they probably should also avoid doing extremes of sugar, because that can cause anger, or it can cause a sudden pitta aggravation, or
refined sugars, or
no, just eating fruit sugar. Yeah, because it's what you want when you're in that type of metabolism, skinny and thin, is you want to make sure you don't get mineral deficient, especially oil soluble vitamins and minerals. Yeah. And that, again, this is something that over time shows up. Somebody who gets deficient vitamin A, D, E, K. Yeah. Fat soluble vitamins. And then, of course, there's a lot to be said about being able to be grounded and do work. If you're eating that kind of a diet, you're very flighty, and you're very vata, very thin, and you don't have any cooked food. Yeah. And you don't really have enough oil or enough seaweed or those kinds of things in your diet to ground you, then it becomes very difficult to actually sit down and do work, which might be needed depending on that person's vocation. So there's a lot of factors at work, obviously.
There's so many factors.
Yeah,
so many factors. And to me, when a lot of people talk to me about it, it's like a lot of emotion comes up around it as well. Emotion in the patterns that people have with their eating patterns, and certain things, maybe things like cheeses or something, suppressing the emotions. Have you
sure. Yeah, people will become addicted to foods that suppress their emotions or don't allow those emotions to come up and block it. Yeah. Cheese is one of those kinds of foods. Coffee is another one. Okay. So different things will come up, and you just have to kind of look at your overall strategy of your lifestyle and make the appropriate next best steps. That you really have to. That's really the thing, because we can't just eat the conventional fare of our world anymore. It's too toxic. It's too chemicalized. It's too dangerous. It's
too dangerous. Yeah, the supermarkets are dangerous.
Yeah,
they're a dangerous place to go. So I had a question. This is sort of all for parents and stuff out there that have got kids, and then they're interested into introducing living foods for their children. And have you come across any good techniques or strategies or anything that's worked with friends or family that you know, or people that you've taught that have had some success with introducing, getting the kids more into raw foods and living foods? And
one of the great tricks I saw when I was really early on in my career was when I saw a family that was doing dehydrated crackers with vegetable pulp in it. Okay. So they were eating the vegetable in the crackers. So they would dehydrate these crackers for the whole family, and they were basically acid-alkaline balanced. It wasn't just seeds, it was seeds and vegetables mixed together. So that was a kind of a cool little trick, and a trick that I like. Yeah. I think it's really important to have that smoothie every day, so that at least the right stuff goes in, whatever that family really wants to get in their child. They have to decide which superfoods are appropriate for that climate, that family, that age group. There's a lot of factors. And then I think vegetable juice is a key thing. You get your family doing vegetable juice. It's a really great idea. And you can just start with the simples of carrot, celery, apple. Yeah. And, play around with more of the sweet stuff just because it's fun. And then eventually develop a family, almost like ritual of doing green juices. And I know families that do that, where the whole family gets together and drinks green juice.
Yeah, I like that element.
Yeah.
So it's, and rather than necessarily sitting down to the table to eat, you like have all your juices together and stuff as well.
Yeah,
as a ritual.
Yeah, as a ritual. Like, yeah, so it's a different thing that the family does. Instead of sitting down to eat, everybody gets together and juices every day, so then everybody has their green juice every day. And I've seen families really successfully do that. It's really cool, you know, that kids,
green juice,
young kids can be into it.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, cool. Wow, I still got a few more. Are we cool for a few more?
Maybe a couple more questions.
Yeah, a couple more. Well, should we like bounce into like you're here and like first of all I wanted to give like a big thanks out because we're here at the Chocolate Love Temple and the Chocolate Love Temple was highly influenced through David and Sky setting it up as a information portal here in Glastonbury in the UK. So that was exciting. So big thanks for you to help make this happen.
Right on, thanks.
Through your influence, this is like, you know, come into being. And I was at your talk, and you were discussing the #1 superfood, and so your #1 superfood is
chocolate, of course. That's why we're at the Chocolate Love Temple. It's just, yeah, this is my book that I wrote with Shazzy from the UK, and we break it down in here. And I actually just completed the update on this book. So it's the first time it's actually been completely updated to the current state of the science on chocolate, which is wonderful. I'm very happy about it. Yeah. And I also did put a lot of information about chocolate in my superfoods book. So these two are kind of loaded with it. Now, there's a guy in the US, and you can just YouTube him if you're watching on YouTube right now, Bernardo Lapallo, who's actually 110 years old.
Woo! 110,
man. You know, when people get completely neurotic and crazy about chocolate, you know, it's one of the most neurotic hot buttons, both in a good way and a bad way.
Yeah.
We, of course, like the good way. But if you're onto the bad way and you're like a chocolate basher, he's 110 years old, and he says the #1 longevity food is chocolate. So you're going to have to take your argument with him. You know, he's 110.
He's 100.
When you're 110, then you can argue with him, but you're probably not, so I take his word for it. And the longest-lived woman in Europe, Jeanne Calment, lived to be 122 and 164 days. She ate 1 kilo of chocolate a week.
1 kilo
You can check her out on YouTube and Google and Wikipedia that one. And that's because chocolate is the #1 longevity food of all.
#1 longevity food
of all, and that's according to the research. The Dutch have done research, and by the way, my detractors never provide any research. I provide all the research, and it's all on sacredchocolate.com, and you can go to Chocolate Science, and it's all there, every study on chocolate.
These are some of your ones. So David has kindly brought lots of his chocolates now, so it's a chocolate party here at the Chocolate Love Temple. We've got our chocolate bars, and now we also now stocking David's chocolate bars here in the UK. So if you want to check out Sacred Chocolate, David's Sacred Chocolate, we now are going to be stocking them here in the UK. So that's really exciting. That's
exciting to see them in the
yesterday.
Yeah, this is amazing.
In our chocolate counter.
The counter.
Yeah.
Not the bin. You guys have a different name for bin.
Chocolate Dimension. It's our chocolate dimension.
So the basic idea here is that chocolate is extremely nutritious and is ultimately a reward food. So if you train a dolphin, how do you train a dolphin? How do you train a dog? How do you train a gerbil? You know, food reward, right? A food reward. And that's how you train yourself. Right? You do a long cleanse, you do 10 days, very strict, rigorous. You break the cleanse, really strict, rigorous, really great, and all of a sudden 2 weeks into it, you're like, okay, now I need to reward myself for a job well done. Well,
wow, I like that.
If you rewarded yourself with raw chocolate, then you actually are going to probably repeat your performance, right? Performance that is rewarded will be repeated. So chocolate is a wonderful tool in that way. And if you're rewarding yourself every 10 minutes, then probably you have to have a talk, because that does happen. Chocolate is, you know, it's the most sacred food. It's a holy food. It's one of the great kind of, you know, treats in our life.
Yeah.
And so now we've been able to figure out how to do it raw.
Yeah.
And so we don't get the side effects, and the same way as we did with like the Rapidura chocolate, all that cooked chocolate, and really have a go at how good chocolate can be for us. Now, let me get back to the Dutch. The Dutch have done a study on over 400 men, and I put this in my Superfoods book here, and they interestingly found, when they studied these men at 65, 70, 75, and then 80 years of age, that the ones who actually reached the age of 80 were the chocolate eaters. And that was not what they expected, of course. They found out that the people who ate the most chocolate were most likely to be alive still at 80 years old. And in fact, what they found out is that if you eat chocolate, your risk, and I'm talking about real chocolate, like this kind of chocolate, your risk of dying of a heart attack is cut in half, according to the Dutch research. Wow. There is no food, there is no herb, there is no medicine, there is no supplement on this earth that has that powerful of an effect on the world's #1 killer, which is even a greater killer, heart disease, than cancer.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's like an amazing discovery. That is incredible. And so what we're finding out more and more is that certain foods keep matriculating to the top of this longevity conversation.
Yeah.
And one of those is chocolate.
Awesome. Wow, well I think on that high note of chocolate and David all dressed in chocolate colour today. He's like he's the giant cacao bean. So from Dunk Campbell and David Avocado, Giant Cacao Bean Wolf.
We are wishing
I just want to say thanks very much, David.
The best day ever from the Chocolate Love Temple here in Glastonbury in the UK.
Glastonbury, UK, Chocolate Love Temple. Thanks very much. Bye. Aloha. Nice.
All right. Cool.
Right. Cool.